Hello everyone, very good morning and welcome to Unacademy, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to our daily Hindu news analysis. So let's begin today's discussion by first looking at the topics that I have chosen from the Delhi edition of the Hindu. For today's discussion, I have picked 8 important articles and some of them are very important for our mains exam. And we have few articles that are relevant for the prelims examination. So let's cover these topics one by one and let's ensure that it's a comprehensive discussion so that you don't have to go back and read the newspaper again. If you guys are benefiting from these initiatives, do let us know in the comments. Don't forget to press the like button and as well as subscribe to our channel. So before we start, we have a small announcement. We are providing a flat 50% discount on our IAS courses along with a 6-month free extension on the subscription plan. The English batch is starting from 16th of March, so you can make use of this offer and enroll for the program. So with this, let's begin with today's discussion by looking at this important column from page number 10. And this article deals with India's relations with Bhutan. The column is written by Suhasini Haider, a top expert and journalist as far as international relations are concerned. And she's talking about some new developments in India's ties with Bhutan. So first, let's look at the context. Let's understand why the topic is in news. And then we are going to conduct a detailed analysis of this particular topic. We also have a related article on page number 16. And according to the article, Prime Minister Modi might visit Bhutan in the coming week. So there are many big developments taking place in the India-Bhutan relations, and hence we have a detailed column on this particular relationship. So this week, Bhutan's Prime Minister Tshering Togbe is on a visit to India. He's visiting India for 5 days. And in fact, yesterday we had a number of press releases from the Press Information Bureau, which pointed out that India-Bhutan have signed some important agreements during the visit of Bhutan's Prime Minister. In fact, Bhutan also just went through elections in January 2024, and Tshering Togbe has been elected as the Prime Minister of Bhutan for the second time. So, following his electoral victory, he is visiting India. He has met with the Indian Prime Minister and the other top ministers and officials. And as a result, some key agreements were signed over the last couple of days. So, Bhutan's Prime Minister has also informed the Indian media that Prime Minister Modi may also travel to Bhutan next week, and we may expect more agreements to be signed between India and Bhutan. So that is why the topic is in news, and as a result, the topic becomes very relevant for our examination. So just take a quick look at some of the agreements that were signed over the last 2 days. India and Bhutan are signing an agreement that deals with energy efficiency and energy conservation. Because between India and Bhutan, energy cooperation has been an important domain. In fact, India has helped Bhutan in the energy sector, and Bhutan is also very interested in energy efficiency and energy conservation. Because Bhutan is a country which is very mindful about its energy consumption and carbon emissions. So India and Bhutan collaborate very closely in the energy sector, and the two countries are signing this agreement that focuses on bringing energy efficiency to reduce energy losses and to conserve energy. India and Bhutan are also signing an agreement with regard to supply of petroleum products from India to Bhutan. Because Bhutan is very dependent on India for the supply of all essential items, including petroleum and fuel supplies, and as well as food, medicines, etc. All these basic supplies are sent from India to Bhutan, as Bhutan has a very limited economy. Its connectivity is also constrained, and as a result, Bhutan depends heavily on India. So to further supply petroleum products from India to Bhutan, this agreement is being signed. Plus, the two countries are signing an agreement on food safety as well, in order to extend the food safety standards which are seen in India between the Food Safety Standards Authority of India and the regulators in Bhutan. An agreement is being signed on food safety. So these are some important agreements that were signed, and India and Bhutan are going to further take forward this relationship in the coming days. Because Bhutan's Prime Minister is here in India for 3 more days, And most likely PM Modi might also visit Bhutan next week, right before elections are announced in India. So we may even expect some big agreement or deal to be signed. And that is why the topic becomes very, very important. So this column is specifically focused on a project that Bhutan has recently announced. Bhutan is focusing on developing a new industrial tourist center, and it is focusing on building a brand new city called Gelephu. And India is going to play a big role in the development of this new city that Bhutan is planning. So the article is essentially talking about the viability of this project. So before we look at the viability of this project and what India can do to assist Bhutan in realizing this project, let us understand India-Bhutan relations in slight detail. Let us talk about why Bhutan is a significant partner for India. So to understand this, first we have to look at the map of the region and understand where Bhutan is located. Because eventually geopolitics, it's all about the geography of a place, right? International relations is defined by the geography of a place. The physical geography of a place and as well as the human geography of a place defines its politics and international relations. So if you look at Bhutan, it is a landlocked Himalayan country. It is surrounded by two large Asian powers, that is India and China. It is quite literally sandwiched between India and China, both of whom have a standing border dispute. And also, if you look at Bhutan's political system and its demography, till date it remains a monarchy. It's a constitutional monarchy. So you have the king, who's the head of the state, and there is an elected government. Of course, there is a prime minister, there is a cabinet, there is an elected government. But democracy in Bhutan is quite limited. It remains a constitutional electoral democracy and monarchy, right? So this Himalayan kingdom is a Buddhist majority nation. And this is a strong cultural link that binds India and Bhutan. India being the birthplace of Buddhism, right? And Bhutan being a Buddhist majority country, it's quite natural for India and Bhutan to work together. And we have a civilizational relationship that predates even colonial rule. And from centuries, people of India and Bhutan have been interacting with each other. So in modern times as well, this cultural aspect and economic aspect of the relationship takes over. And that is why the two countries have a very, very close relationship. So India, being the larger neighbor, has always played a big role in the development of Bhutan. India has always been there to assist Bhutan whenever it requires, be it with regard to its security, be it with regard to its economic growth or infrastructure development, and even with regard to resource exploration and resource exploitation. India has always stood with Bhutan, and even during every time of crisis, India has always backed Bhutan consistently. So essentially, it is a trust-based relationship. In fact, many experts and even former Indian diplomats, they often refer to this relationship as a model relationship. It is often said that this is how a diplomatic relation should be between any two countries. India-Bhutan do not have any major conflicts or disputes. We don't have any history of animosity or hostility with each other. It is completely built on friendship. There is trust in this relationship. India has put a lot of faith on Bhutan, and Bhutan also has always believed in India. Both the countries have looked out for each other, and they have helped each other to protect their respective national interests. So it is such a unique relationship that has developed between the two countries. So as far as South Asia is concerned, and as far as India's immediate neighborhood is concerned, India-Bhutan relations are extremely important. Even for the examination, the topic is very important. Don't neglect Bhutan, just assuming that it's a small country, no questions will be asked. Even though it's a very small Himalayan nation, it does play a very, very important role as far as India's national interests are concerned. Now don't forget, since Bhutan is sandwiched between India and China, it obviously ends up playing a role as far as the India-China boundary dispute and the tensions between India and China in the region are concerned. So that is the reason why this partnership is very crucial to India as well. And that is something India has always taken care of. India has ensured that we don't impose ourselves on Bhutan. right? Of course, India is the larger power, but we have never tried interfering in Bhutan's internal matters. We have never imposed India's wishes on Bhutan. India has always respected Bhutan's interests, and even though it's a very small country, we have treated Bhutan as an equal partner. So that is what allows Bhutan to trust India as well. And that's what builds this model trust-based relationship. But if you look at Bhutan's economy, if you look at its development plan, Bhutan is very unique when compared to any other country in the world. Bhutan has largely stayed away from large-scale industrial development. Bhutan is very mindful of its cultural, spiritual heritage. It is also very mindful of its sensitive environment and biodiversity. In fact, Bhutan does not even believe in GDP-led growth. It does not believe in measuring growth in statistical numbers. It has incorporated a very unique model of development that is based on the GNH model, the Gross National Happiness Index. Bhutan measures its growth through Gross National Happiness, which is a collective index that includes economic development along with cultural, social, environmental, and spiritual development. Bhutan has given utmost priority for environment conservation, for biodiversity protection. It is one of the few carbon neutral countries in the world, and it has deliberately stayed away from polluting industries. So that is why Bhutan is seen as one of the leaders when it comes to climate action efforts. Even at the Climate Change Convention, Bhutan is very popular, and other countries look up to Bhutan for its leadership role because it is one country which has quite successfully pioneered sustainable development. While keeping in mind the environmental aspects, Bhutan has been able to meet the needs of its people without compromising on its environmental values. So Bhutan contributes very little to emissions. In fact, the whole country is like a carbon sink. And in several years, Bhutan has been rated as carbon negative, meaning it's absorbing more greenhouse gases than it is contributing. But at least in most years, it is carbon neutral for sure. So that is the development path that Bhutan has followed, and it does not want to disturb this development model. So the Chinese angle present here is indeed a determining factor in India-Bhutan relations as well. India-Bhutan relations is heavily dependent on what China does in the Himalayan belt. In fact, if you go back in time, if you look at the history of this relationship, right? India-Bhutan cemented their relationship by signing a historic treaty in 1949, the India-Bhutan Friendship Treaty. Since then, the Indian leadership and Bhutan's leadership have always been very, very close to each other. Indian prime ministers, starting from Nehru all the way till Prime Minister Modi, they've all shared a very good equation with the royal family, with the kings of Bhutan. It is this personal chemistry between the leaders and the trust-based partnership between the two governments which has built this close partnership. So when China was established, when the People's Republic of China was established by 1949, and as it started displaying its expansionist, aggressive behavior from 1949-1950 itself, this tendency of China to try and expand its territory by annexing, occupying other territories, this sent alarm and shock waves across the Himalayan belt. When China annexed Tibet in 1950 through aggressive action, when it further expanded towards Central Asia as well by capturing the whole of Xinjiang, this created a lot of concern all across the Himalayan belt, and obviously India was deeply worried. The other Himalayan kingdoms like Nepal, Bhutan, and even Sikkim, don't forget, Sikkim merged fully with India only in 1974-75. But prior to that, Sikkim was just a protectorate state, right? It was just a protectorate state of India. So it was a autonomous Himalayan kingdom, very similar to Bhutan. So if the large kingdom of Tibet could be annexed by China, then the smaller Himalayan kingdoms like Bhutan, Nepal, Sikkim, and others, they did not stand a chance against China. So that is when these Himalayan countries, they sought India's protection. So India-Bhutan started out the relationship on a strategic note. They focused on defense partnership. India agreed to guide Bhutan in its foreign relations. as part of this treaty, Bhutan essentially outsourced its foreign policy to India. So Bhutan agreed that India will guide the country in its foreign policy, and in return, India promised to not interfere in Bhutan's internal matters. Will not meddle with Bhutan's monarchy, will not try to enforce democracy, will not try to meddle with its economic model, right? Will not impose anything on Bhutan. And in return, Bhutan outsourced its foreign policy to India so that India could guide the country in its foreign relations. And this would help protect not just the interests of India, but the interests of Bhutan as well, especially against Chinese aggression. India also committed to defend Bhutan against external threats. So since then, we have been providing military support as well. We have an Indian military training team stationed in Bhutan that trains the Royal Bhutanese Army. We supply weapons to Bhutan as well. Because just like India has a standing border dispute with China, even Bhutan has a standing border dispute with China. So this is something that affects both of us. So from 1949, India-Bhutan have been working together as far as their strategic and defense relations are concerned. In fact, until 2007, India was the one which was running Bhutan's foreign policy. India was the one guiding Bhutan in its foreign relations. It was only in 2007 that this treaty was upgraded. The revised India-Bhutan Treaty of Peace and Friendship was signed in 2007. And since then, Bhutan has been conducting its own foreign policy. In the last 16, 17 years, India has stopped guiding Bhutan in its foreign relations. Right now, Bhutan is autonomously conducting its own foreign relations, but it consults with India very closely. It keeps India in the loop. It provides India all the updates, especially with regard to the ongoing border negotiations between Bhutan and China. In the last 2 years especially, China-Bhutan have accelerated their boundary talks to resolve the boundary dispute. So Bhutan keeps updating India on the progress that China-Bhutan are making, because these boundary talks have an impact on India. India closely watches the boundary negotiations between China and Bhutan. So even though Bhutan is independently conducting its own foreign policy, India still is obligated to defend the country, and we are always ready to help and assist Bhutan in any way possible. Since 1949, India has been the biggest development partner for Bhutan as well. In fact, in the initial years, in 1950s, 1960s, Bhutan's economy was struggling. It only had few basic cottage industries, basic agriculture. It never expanded its economy, right? It never focused on industrial development or exploitation. So of late, Bhutan's economy is very dependent on tourism. Tourism brings in some revenue. Plus, recently, Bhutan has become an exporter of electricity. It exports hydropower. These are the major sources of revenue. But back in 50s and 60s, Bhutan didn't have these main streams of revenue. And as a result, it was financially dependent on India. In fact, through India's budget, we would sponsor Bhutan's developmental programs. Bhutan also had adopted the planned model of development, the 5-year plans, very similar to India's planned model of development. So India would finance and support the 5-year plans of Bhutan, and we would provide budgetary support, budgetary assistance. Even now, if you look at the allocation given to the Ministry of External Affairs in our union budget, right? The highest allocation given in the budget is to Bhutan. Every year, right? If you go through the economic survey, for example, you will find that in our foreign policy, in the allocation given to the Ministry of External Affairs, the highest budgetary allocation given is to assist Bhutan's developmental programs. Compared to any other country, we provide the maximum financial support and assistance to Bhutan. So that is the special relationship that we share with each other. As I told you, it is a trust-based relationship, and it's a very unique model relationship. So India has invested heavily in Bhutan's infrastructure and as well as in the energy sector. Starting right from the days of Prime Minister Nehru, India launched a project called Project Dantak. Under Project Dantak, India started providing funds and technical support for basic infrastructure projects in the country, like building roads, building bridges, setting up power plants, establishing power grids. All such infrastructure projects and development projects were not only financed by India, but they were constructed by India. So this was done under Project Dantak, which has been a joint collaborative project between India and Bhutan. It's been going on since 1960s. So of late, India is very focused on Bhutan's hydropower sector. Because don't forget, Bhutan has tremendous hydropower potential. As a Himalayan country, right, it has fast-flowing rivers, it has deep gorges and valleys, which is the perfect geographical requirement for setting up hydropower plants. And also hydropower is relatively cleaner and it's seen as a much cleaner form of energy as compared to fossil fuels. So Bhutan is very much focused on hydropower exploitation, and it is India which has assisted Bhutan. India has taken up many hydropower projects. We have completed some of the largest hydropower projects in the region, and that is how today Bhutan is exporting electricity. It has become an exporter of power in South Asia. In fact, Bhutan sells the surplus electricity that is being generated through these hydropower plants, and India purchases this and we re-export this to Bangladesh and Nepal. These four countries, the BBIN countries, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, they have a power sharing agreement between them. So India is the one connecting these countries. We take the surplus from Bhutan, and by using the power grids of India, we transfer some of the surplus to Bangladesh and Nepal, which face a deficit in their electricity supplies. So India plans to create a regional power grid and further expand this to make it a much larger transnational global power grid. So India and Bhutan have this close collaboration. And because of these Indian investments, today Bhutan is exporting electricity, generating significant revenue, and today it's becoming more independent financially as well. In fact, Bhutan today has one of the largest per capita incomes in South Asia, even more than India. So that shows how Bhutan has developed over the years with India's support and assistance. Now coming to the core topic which is being dealt with under the article. Bhutan has recently announced a mega project called Gelephu Mindfulness City. It's planning to build a brand new city, similar to how Indonesia is building its own new capital, Nusantara, or how Saudi Arabia is building a new sustainable city called Neom. On similar lines, Bhutan plans to build a modern sustainable city which could drive economic activities in the region and benefit Bhutan's economy. So this project, which is slated to come up over here at a place called Gelephu, it is located right along the India-Bhutan border. You can see the Indian state of Assam over here. So right across the border here, you have Gelephu, where Bhutan has proposed the Mindfulness City project. So this project holds a lot of promise, not just for Bhutan, but for the whole region. And India actually has a very big role to play in ensuring the success of this project. So let us see what is Bhutan planning as part of this Mindfulness City project, and how India can assist and what challenges are present with regard to this project. See, Bhutan's vision is to develop a modern city, but not like Singapore or Hong Kong or Dubai, but a sustainable city with sustainable infrastructure. Bhutan wants to ensure that the city will have a limited carbon footprint, because Bhutan does not want to deviate from its sustainable path, and it doesn't want to compromise on its gross national happiness index. So it will be establishing a sustainable city with sustainable infrastructure, and this region will have a special administration. Investor-friendly laws will be introduced with a special administrative zone, quite similar to special economic zones, to encourage several industries to come here and operate from here. So Bhutan will not allow any polluting industry. As I told you, Bhutan never gives priority for such kind of industrial exploitation. This city will focus on attracting non-polluting industries, like services industries, for example, information technology, right? Or education, tourism, hotel industry. So this city will largely focus on non-polluting industries, particularly on the services sector. So since it is located very close to the Indian border, right, this could transform the northeast region of India as well. I'm sure you know that In the Northeast, India also has faced challenges with regard to connectivity and development. So this could be a great opportunity. A modern city like Gelephu coming right along the border could drive economic activities and development across the Northeast region. So that is why recently India has launched a railway project. We have launched a railway project to connect Kokrajhar in Assam, which is in the Bodo region. This is the Bodoland area, right, which is an autonomous district council as well. So from Kokrajhar, Indian Railways is creating a transnational railway link to connect this with Gelephu. So this railway link could be a transformative link that could bring India-Bhutan closer, and it could help realize the dream of Bhutan to set up this modern mindfulness city, right? But of course, India is very, very interested in this project because it presents a very unique opportunity for India. See, Bhutan alone won't be able to execute this project because there are many challenges it has to overcome, which I'll discuss in a short while. But first, let's see what opportunities are there for India to be a part of this project. See, first of all, this project of Bhutan, it perfectly aligns with India's foreign policy vision. The Modi government has launched the Neighborhood First policy, under which we are prioritizing our ties with our neighboring countries in South Asia. So obviously, by working with Bhutan on such a key project, we can give a boost to the Neighborhood First policy of the Indian government. It will help boost India-Bhutan relations, which could be good for the entire South Asia region. We could further use these projects and these connectivity links to connect closely with other South Asian countries like Bangladesh and Nepal as well, right? It also fits perfectly with our Act East policy. The Look East policy, which was upgraded to Act East policy, it focuses on improving India's ties with our eastern neighbors, starting with Myanmar, and it focuses on prioritizing our relations with Southeast and East Asia. So we already have some important projects with Southeast Asian countries, like the Trilateral Highway project that you can see over here. As part of Act East policy, the India-Thailand-Myanmar highway is being constructed to create this direct link from Northeast India, from the border town of More in Manipur, which is an important trading and commercial town, and to link this highway with Myanmar and Thailand. The plan is to connect with Mesot in Thailand. So this highway project, which is a key connectivity project, which has been taken up under Look East Act East policy, it will perfectly align with the Gelephu project of Bhutan. If India assists Bhutan in this city project and drives economic activities and connectivity across Northeast India, this could further connect with the IMT highway, the Trilateral highway, and open new gateways to Southeast Asia. So both Northeast India and as well as Bhutan can access Southeast Asian markets. It can drive investments from Southeast Asian countries towards Bhutan and Northeast India. So we could find new markets as well for exports from Northeast India and Bhutan. So it perfectly aligns with Act East policy of India and the Neighborhood First policy of India. It also aligns with our Indo-Pacific vision. India wants to be seen as a leading power of the Indo-Pacific. So by building such regional cooperation, not just with Bhutan, but with other neighboring countries as well, through such projects, India could definitely emerge as a leader of not just the Indian Ocean, but the broader Indo-Pacific region as well. Across the Indo-Pacific, we are facing stiff competition from China and other powers. So these projects could align with the other projects that we are pursuing with, let's say, Bangladesh or Nepal and other Southeast Asian countries. For example, look at this map over here. It's depicting some of the connectivity projects between India and Bangladesh. Between India and Bangladesh, we have road-based connectivity, railway connectivity, and very close inland navigation and maritime connectivity as well. We have connected our inland waterways, such as the Ganga River, the Brahmaputra River, the Barak River. They have been connected with the major river systems in Bangladesh to create an inland waterway network. Our road and railway lines have been interlinked, and this creates alternate routes to connect with Northeast India. India can reduce its dependency on the narrow Siliguri corridor located over here in West Bengal, which is a choke point for India. So we can open new routes, alternate routes via Bangladesh to connect with Northeast India, and Northeast India can also access important ports of Bangladesh like Chittagong and Mongla port. The Chittagong port, or also known as the Chattogram port, is a strategic port in the Bay of Bengal. And Bangladesh also has another port over here called the Mongla port. So India can access these ports of Bangladesh present along these deltaic plains facing the Bay of Bengal and connect them with Northeast India, with, let's say, Mizoram, Tripura, Assam, and drive new alternate routes so that even the landlocked Northeast region could connect with the seas and the oceans. So the vision of India is perfectly aligned with the vision of Bhutan. In fact, Japan is also a major contributor here. India, Japan are working together to boost connectivity across this region, especially in the Northeast region. India and Japan have been working very closely as part of the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor. And Japan has been providing a lot of investments and loans to India to execute some key connectivity projects in the Northeast. From Assam to Arunachal Pradesh to Nagaland to Manipur, Japan has been funding many development projects, and Bhutan's new city, which has been planned, will perfectly fit into this strategy of India and Japan. So this could drive regional integration across South Asia, across the Indian Ocean, and with Southeast Asia as well. So that is why this project of Bhutan definitely has a lot of potential. Its potential extends beyond South Asia, and India realizes that. But however, there are some significant challenges. So you should know about this, because the UPSC can ask a question, a mains question, asking you to talk about Bhutan's Gelephu project, which has been proposed, and what challenges are there in its execution, or how India can assist Bhutan in executing this project. See, one big challenge is the geographical challenge. If you look at the geography of this proposed city, it is a plain area surrounded entirely by Himalayan mountains and dense forests. So as a result, this region receives heavy rainfall and it is very prone to flooding during the monsoon season. So this represents a risk to the proposed city itself. So this is where India could assist Bhutan in ensuring that the city is climate proof and disaster proof. The lack of connectivity is another major concern. Gelephu right now lacks a good airport. It lacks railway and road connectivity. So this is where India can play a big role in ensuring that the city is well connected, especially with Indian cities, from Kolkata to Guwahati to other major commercial centers in the Northeast, right? They will have to be connected with the city in Bhutan. Then, of course, there are environmental concerns, because this proposed city sits right in the middle of an elephant corridor. It's a major migration corridor for elephants, and it is home to dense forests and a very good biodiversity. So the project could have certain environmental consequences as well. Plus, there are security concerns, because given the state of Northeast insurgency across few Northeastern states, there is a security concern here, because in the past there was one incident where few Northeast insurgents had taken shelter in Bhutan, particularly near the proposed Gelephu city. This was in late 1980s. In late 1990s, India had carried out a major counter-insurgency operation called Operation Rhino. The Indian Army and Assam Rifles, they were countering multiple Northeast insurgent groups back in the late 1990s. And this operation was conducted across Northeastern states, from Assam to Tripura to Nagaland. So many of these insurgents who were under pressure from Indian security forces, they ran away from India, they crossed into Bhutan and took shelter in these forested areas of Bhutan. So once India-Bhutan realized their presence, right, who were hiding in Bhutan's forests, in 2003-2004, we launched a joint operation called Operation All Clear, to flush out these insurgents who were hiding in the forests of Bhutan. So India-Bhutan have a very close security collaboration. Bhutan has never tolerated such safe havens for Northeast insurgents. It has worked with India, in fact, to flush out any such security threats. But the concern is There are few insurgent groups which are still active in the northeast region, so they might pose a threat to any such proposed projects. Plus, you all know the current situation in Myanmar. The current crisis going on in Myanmar, including the refugee crisis and almost a civil war-like situation. It has a spillover effect on the northeast region, and it could derail these connectivity projects and developmental projects as well. Right? Plus, Bhutan is internally facing a problem. There is a massive out-migration of its youth. Bhutan's current generation, they don't find good opportunities in Bhutan for education, for employment. So many of them, they seek out better opportunities in other countries. Some Bhutanese students and workers come to India, but many of them who can afford other countries, they go to Singapore, Australia, or even United States and European countries. So all the good talent has been leaving the country, causing a brain drain or an out-migration of talent. So if Bhutan is planning to come up with a service-based industry, non-polluting industries in this new city, it will require such talent to be present in the country. So to deal with that, Bhutan will need the right policies, education policies, employment policies will be needed to ensure that it can retain the youth, the talented youth, who can drive these development initiatives. So this is where India can play a big role. India can assist Bhutan with regard to all these challenges, be it the environmental problems, be it the concerns about disasters, right? Concern about connectivity, concerns about security, concerns about funds. All these problems of Bhutan can be solved by India. But Bhutan will have to solve one problem for India, which is the standing border dispute between Bhutan and China. Please look at the map. It is showing you the 3 disputed locations, which is a standing dispute between the 2 countries. So China and Bhutan have a dispute over here at Doklam, which is at the tri-junction of India, China and Bhutan. You can see Sikkim over here. This is where the strategic Nathula Pass is located, just few kilometers away from Doklam. This is the Chumbi Valley of Tibet. Right? So through the Chumbi Valley, China can access the Doklam region and it can get close to India's Nathula Pass in Sikkim. From here, it's just a short distance to the Siliguri corridor in West Bengal, which is the chicken's neck of India, which is a choke point for India. So given the presence of these vital locations, India wants to ensure that Doklam firmly remains under Bhutan's control and sovereignty. Right now, both India and Bhutan have a military presence here. They patrol the region and they control the region as well. But recently in 2017, Chinese troops had entered Doklam and they had started constructing an illegal road which was opposed by the Indian army. This led to clashes between Indian soldiers and Chinese soldiers, which escalated into a major military standoff. It almost appeared that India and China were preparing for a limited war or a conflict over the Doklam dispute. Finally, the tensions were resolved with the intervention of the top leaders of the 2 countries, but this remains a sensitive point. So China is very interested in Doklam because of its strategic location. It's very close to Nathula Pass and Siliguri corridor, and that would give China a vantage position against India. So India will never want Doklam to be given away to China. India would want this region to be firmly under the control of Bhutan. So other 2 places which are disputed are Jakarlung and Pasamlung, located over here, towards the northern border of Bhutan and China. So these boundary talks have been going on from 1984. In fact, when India was guiding Bhutan in its foreign policy, it was India which was facilitating these boundary talks. But since 2007, Bhutan has been conducting its own foreign relations. And in the last 2-3 years, they have accelerated the boundary talks. So India's fear is that China might propose a trade-off or an exchange. China might try to convince Bhutan that if you give away Doklam to us, you can keep Jakarlung and Pasamlung. So if such a trade-off were to occur, then that would be a strategic concern for India, right? Plus, China has raised a new dispute with Bhutan over the Sakteng region located over here, which is towards the Arunachal border. You can see India's Arunachal Pradesh over there, and this is the Tawang region, which is disputed between India and China, right? India firmly believes that Tawang and the whole of Arunachal is Indian territory. But China keeps creating problems for India, and very close to Tawang, Bhutan has this wildlife sanctuary called Sakteng, and this whole region is being claimed by China. So China might be doing this deliberately to put pressure on Bhutan so that it can propose an exchange or a trade-off. China's real interest is Doklam. It doesn't care much about Jakarlung, Pasamlung or even Sakteng. But by pressurizing Bhutan over here, China might try to get hold of Doklam in exchange for the other disputed territories. So this is what concerns India and worries India. So if Bhutan can be transparent about its negotiations with China, if Bhutan can keep India in the loop, right, and protect India's core interests, then definitely India can do everything possible to ensure that these development projects of Bhutan can succeed. The project can definitely be a game changer for the whole region, not just for the Himalayan belt, but for South Asia, Bay of Bengal, and even Southeast Asia. So India will definitely play a big role in ensuring the success of the project. But of course, one has to be mindful of all the challenges and hurdles that are present. So that is what we take away from this column. Of course, we have gone beyond the article so that we can comprehensively cover this topic and you don't have to go and read this topic again, right? So you can expect mains questions based on this. So I hope you have understood everything. Now, before we proceed with the other articles, there's a small announcement regarding the free special classes that we are running on the Unacademy app. So we have NCERT Fundamentals, which is an ongoing series where every morning from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. we have been covering important NCERT textbooks and helping you cover the basic concepts. So right now, Geography NCERT is going on, where Mukesh Sir is conducting these classes. And as part of the IR special series on the role of Prime Ministers in Indian foreign policy, today afternoon at 1 p.m., I'll be taking a session on the role of Lal Bahadur Shastri in shaping India's foreign policy. So do attend these sessions live, and the links for these classes is provided in the video description below. So let's look at the next two articles, the two big columns that we have. The topics are important, but we don't have much to discuss in these articles. But there are some key points that we can take away, and that is what I'll try to focus upon. So there is this column on page number 10, which is related to India's attempts to regulate the domain of generative AI. The Indian government has been sending few signals over the last few months, and it is showing its intention to bring in regulation to regulate the artificial intelligence sector, especially the generative AI industry, given the risks associated with generative AI. Now, this is a topic that we have explored in many previous sessions as well. We have understood what is generative AI, right, and what opportunities they present. At the same time, what risks do they present as well. So India is definitely concerned about the misuse of generative AI tools, especially how deep fake technology can be easily misused to create security problems. So India wants to ensure that the industry is regulated. But the problem is, any planned regulation should be done within the legal framework that exists. The writers are arguing that India quite often tries to enforce censorship on many industries in the name of regulation. Without adequate legal backing, the Indian government and various ministries, they try to bring laws, rules and policies and notifications in order to control various sectors and industries, which in a way becomes a form of censorship, and the government calls it regulation. That's what the writers are arguing. That is the writer's viewpoint. The writer is referring to the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, also referred to as MEITY. This is the nodal ministry, the concerned ministry that deals with information technology, artificial intelligence and other related sectors. So recently, the MEITY ministry has brought out few notifications and issued some advisories as well, which shows its intention to regulate the generative AI industry. But these notifications and advisories that were issued has raised a lot of concern, and it has invited a lot of criticism from the industry and from the civil society. Because the ministry has developed a habit of relying on the IT Act of 2000 and the IT rules that have been notified under it recently in 2021 it has been constantly relying on this legal framework to keep issuing notices to various tech-related industries. Now, this has become quite alarming because, see, IT rules of 2021 that was notified under the IT Act, it was specifically meant for regulation of social media, OTT platforms, and digital news platforms. These IT rules were again amended to include online gaming industry as well. So these are the specific tech industries which are supposed to be regulated under IT rules. These rules already were controversial given the fact that the government had given itself a lot of powers to regulate social media and other forms of new media, right? And this had given rise to concerns that government is trying to censor any content which is critical of the government. So now the same legal framework is being used as a basis to issue random advisories and notices and notifications to various other tech-related industries. That includes the AI industry. See, please understand that India does not have a law as of now to regulate artificial intelligence, right? We don't have any policy or legal framework as far as regulation of AI industry is concerned. The IT Act, if you go through the provisions of IT Act, its primary purpose is to regulate electronic commerce and any form of electronic transaction in the country. But that is a very broad law dealing with information technology, dealing with computers, internet, cyber crimes, etc. So you can't use this law, which is actually outdated, and use that as a basis to keep issuing advisories and notices for other related industries as well. So that is why industry experts, civil society leaders, they have criticized the government, especially the MEITY ministry, which is seen to be exercising its powers to censor various tech-based industries. For example, the government has repeatedly ordered Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and other platforms to take down certain content which has been critical of the government and government leaders. So this has been interpreted as an assault on right to free speech and expression. Right? In fact, when IT rules were notified 3 years ago, there was a lot of concern that the government could misuse these powers to stifle the right to criticize, the right to dissent, and use this to enforce censorship rules on the tech industry. So now, according to the writer, these fears are in a way coming true because for every tech-based problem, every tech-based concern that's coming up, the government, especially the MEITY ministry, is simply relying on IT Act and IT rules, which doesn't even apply or which is not even relevant. And it's relying on these rules to try and issue notices and advices to other related tech platforms as well. So this does not have a solid legal basis. This essentially could indicate a tendency of the government, particularly certain ministries, to not focus on proper regulation through a new law. Rather, they are trying to rely on these outdated laws and regulations and trying to scare the industry or trying to enforce its will on the industry. So this could stifle innovation as well in the AI sector. Generative AI definitely has great potential. It can drive our economic growth, create millions of jobs. But such a poor regulatory environment and the frequent interference of the ministry without valid legal basis could derail the industry right at the start. So that is the concern that the writer is expressing. But again, please understand, it is a one-sided view. The article itself is very limited, constrained in its viewpoint. It is not talking about the other concerns associated with generative AI. For example, generative AI has already been misused to create various kind of security problems and social problems, right from deep fake technology to morphed images, visuals, and audio files, right? They've been used to commit cyber crimes. They've been used to enable organized crime as well. So there are deep and genuine concerns associated with the misuse of AI technology. So the article doesn't talk about that at all. So I strongly feel that it's a one-sided article. So just be mindful of that, because as UPSC aspirants, you have to develop a more balanced approach and a more balanced viewpoint, right? Of course, it's good to identify the points of criticism. At the same time, you have to understand the government's viewpoint as well. So this is something we have discussed in previous classes, and I'm giving a hint as to what the government's concerns are. The concern of the government is that if the ministry does not intervene, if it does not issue these notices, advisories, etc., the government fears that these disruptive technologies could be misused to create genuine security problems for the country, which could affect the Indian citizens, right? So that is what we should understand from this article. Next, on page number 11, the Hindu carries an interview with two top experts on the question of poverty levels in India. The topic is in news because recently, the top official of NITI Aayog, the vice chairman of NITI Aayog, stated that poverty levels in India has dropped to below 5.5%. This was a claim made by the vice chairman of NITI Aayog. Now, if this is indeed true, it marks a significant development as far as India's growth story is concerned. The NITI Aayog's vice chairman made this statement based on the findings of the Household Consumption Expenditure Survey, which was recently brought out. The Household Consumption Expenditure Survey provides us crucial information on consumption levels in the country. It gives us an idea as to how much people are spending on essential commodities, from food items to other essential items on a day-to-day basis, right? It gives us a picture as to what people are spending their money on. It helps you understand the consumption patterns in the country, thereby policy makers, right? Policy planners can deduce vital data and accordingly make developmental plans for the country. So based on the findings of the Household Consumption Expenditure Survey, the NITI Aayog vice chairman has opined that it appears that India's poverty levels has fallen below 5%. So the Hindu is checking whether these claims are true. Is it valid? So it is bringing two experts in the field of socio-economic development who have dealt with poverty issues. And through this interview, the Hindu is trying to bring out a very good debate on poverty levels in India and where do we stand as far as India's poverty levels are concerned. So let's understand what were the poverty levels of India almost a decade ago. Because see, to measure poverty, there has to be some threshold line which has to be identified, right? We often refer to this as BPL, below poverty line, right? So there is a certain threshold identified based on certain parameters. So those who fall below this level, below this income level or below this calorie intake level, they are considered as people who are in the poverty category, people who are extremely poor in the country. They represent the lowest strata in the society, right? So this is the threshold which the government has always used to identify people below the poverty line. Now the question is, where exactly is this poverty line? What is this threshold? Who identified this threshold? We will discuss that. So the experts are saying that if you consider the BPL line, the poverty line that the government has been using over the last 10-15 years, as per the data, poverty levels in India, that is extreme levels of poverty, extreme poverty in India was at around 12.5% back in 2011-2012. This was based on the poverty line that was devised by the Suresh Tendulkar Committee. The Suresh Tendulkar Committee had come out with a poverty estimation methodology, which we have been relying upon over the last 10 to 13 years. So according to the Tendulkar Committee recommendations, as per that BPL threshold, extreme poverty in India was at 12.5%. So experts are saying that over the last decade, given the significant growth that India has seen, these levels could have definitely dropped below 5%. The experts are saying that if anyone is earning 1,800 rupees or more in an urban area, or if they are earning more than 1,500 rupees per day in a rural area, this is per day earning, right? If they are able to ensure that they have this level of income, right, then according to Tendulkar Committee recommendations, they don't fall below the poverty line, right? So this threshold is helping you measure only extreme levels of poverty. So the experts are agreeing with the claims of the NITI Aayog that yes, poverty levels according to this line, this measurement, could have fallen below 5%. It might have gone down to as low as 2%. So does that mean that India has eliminated poverty altogether? Does that mean we are on the cusp of removing poverty in the country? The answer is no. Why? Because poverty line, right, itself is very subjective. How you measure poverty is what defines the poverty level in the country. Tomorrow, if I lower the poverty line to a much lower threshold, right, won't there be lesser poor people according to statistics, according to the data? But in reality, the picture could be different, right? So this is where the writers are pointing out that how we measure poverty is what matters. Of course, India has definitely done tremendously well in the last 15, 20 years to uplift its people from poverty, and millions of people have been brought up from the below the poverty line, right? From below the poverty line, they have been brought up above the poverty line. So let's look at poverty estimation in India to understand how these poverty lines are drawn. First, we had the Alag committee headed by Y.K. Alag back in 1979. This committee had used consumption-related data to determine poverty levels. It primarily relied upon food intake and calorie intake as a criteria. The amount of calories being consumed by people in urban and rural areas on a per-day basis was used as a reference point. The nutritional level was used as a reference point to identify the BPL line. But this was seen as a very limited parameter because people don't just rely on basic income for their calorie intake or food. We also need money for other purposes and activities, for education, for healthcare, for meeting other basic needs, right? Food is not the only need for survival. Apart from food, apart from basic calories, right? Apart from the basic nutrition, there are few other basic necessities in life. So this was seen as a flawed methodology. Nutrition-based or calorie-based poverty measurement has always been a flawed methodology. Then we had the Lakdawala Committee of 1993 that tried to rely on inflation data, that tried to base poverty levels on the CPI index, right, which was seen as a slightly better methodology, given that it could factor in inflation levels as well, right? But all the previous methodologies that we had, they were not upgraded, rather they were not keeping in line with the changing economic conditions of the country. So under the then Manmohan Singh government in 2009, the Suresh Tendulkar committee had been set up, and the Tendulkar committee came out with a new measurement of poverty. It moved away from the calorific measurement. It made a big shift away from calorific consumption and poverty estimation and introduced other aspects of consumption as well. It started including expenses on education, healthcare, and other necessities, along with the basic nutrition or food intake to measure poverty levels in the country. So it came out with a specific number, a specific amount that people had to earn per day, per month, or per year in urban and rural areas, depending on which poverty levels could be measured. After this, we also had the Rangarajan Committee, which came out with another methodology, but the Rangarajan Committee's methodology has not been preferred. It's the Tendulkar Committee poverty line, which has largely been referred to by the government and by the experts as well. So if you go by these criterias laid down by the Tendulkar Committee, then yes, poverty levels have gone down below 5%. And as experts are saying, depending on the household consumption expenditure survey data, we can even confidently say that it's anywhere between 2 to 5%, right? Which means India has done spectacularly well to address the issue of poverty. But again, the question is about the poverty line itself. See, India has tackled extreme levels of poverty. There is no doubt about that. Extreme poverty has been tackled. But how about poverty present in the middle to low income categories? Right? If you go by global standards, let's say if you look at World Bank's lower middle income standards and try to adopt that into the Indian context, according to the writers, according to the experts who gave the interview, India's poverty levels will jump to an average of 21%. Around 11% in urban areas will fall under the poverty or the poor category if you adopt the World Bank standards on low and middle income. In rural areas, this will jump very significantly to 25%. 1/4 of our rural population can be considered as poor as per World Bank standards. So on an average, 21% of India's population will still remain under the poverty bracket, right? So it's not right to assume that we have almost eliminated poverty in India, right? Just because due to one estimation line drawn by the Tendulkar committee, and just because we are basing it on that assumption that we have tackled extreme poverty, we can't declare that we have solved the problem of poverty, right? Because there are different levels of poverty. It all depends on how you define this or how you set a threshold for it. So today, poverty is not just based on your daily income or the daily nutritional or calorific intake. There are many other basic necessities that define your poverty levels as well, right? There are many other basic necessities like education, healthcare, which create a vicious cycle of poverty. People who are poor, who can't afford good education, who can't afford basic healthcare, right? They tend to suffer more. It creates a vicious cycle, right? Those families will fall sick quite frequently as they can't afford basic healthcare. Those families will be denied good education opportunities and employment opportunities as they can't afford costly education. So that creates the vicious cycle. It's important to break that vicious cycle of multi-dimensional poverty. So even at global level, if you look at UN institutions, right, like UN Development Program, even they measure multi-dimensional poverty, right? So just measuring poverty through just one unidimension, like the income levels or calorific levels, is a completely wrong and incorrect and flawed approach. And that's why the writers are saying that we have to raise the bar. We have to raise the poverty line. Yes, it's good. We have solved extreme poverty at least. Not entirely, but we are on the cusp of solving extreme poverty in India. That is great news. But now the time has come to raise the poverty level so that we can consider those in the low and middle income bracket and try to uplift them as well, right? So that is what the experts are suggesting based on the statement that was made by the NITI Aayog's chairman, vice chairman. So this completes my discussion of all the big articles. Now let's take a quick look at the prelim section. On page number 4, we have an article related to the Human Development Index, the HDI report, which is one of the most important reports for your exams, right? This report is brought out by a UN institution called UNDP, the UN Development Program. So UNDP's Human Development Report, based on the Human Development Index, popularly called the HDI, has been published. And according to the report, India has been ranked 134th out of 190 odd countries. India's rank has improved by 1 position compared to the previous report. In the previous report, India had ranked at 135th position. Now it has improved by 1 position to 134. So India ranks quite low on this particular index. And many other peers of India, like China, Brazil, they all outperform India. Even other neighboring countries of India, like Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, and others, they outrank India in terms of human development. So India has quite often questioned the methodology as well. But as per the UNDP and the measurement standards it uses, India falls under this development category, which is in the low development category. So how does UNDP measure human development? On the basis of what parameters is human development measured? So there are 3 essential parameters which can be divided into 4 different indicators. So first is health. Health is the first parameter measured as life expectancy at birth, which is the indicator. Life expectancy in a country, right? It's a direct outcome of the quality of healthcare. Second parameter is education, the levels of education in a country, which is captured through 2 important indicators, that is expected years of schooling and mean years of schooling. So it essentially looks at school enrollment ratio, how many students remain in the schooling system, how low is the drop-off rate, right? So these indicators are captured from the schooling system, which gives you data about education level in the country. Then comes standard of living. Standard of living, which is a measure of your income levels. So this is measured as gross national income. So these are the key indicators and parameters used by the UNDP to prepare the Human Development Index report. All right. For today, this is enough, just the basics. We will have detailed articles on this In the coming days, the Hindu will definitely bring out detailed editorials and columns. So we will have a more detailed discussion on this topic sometime later in the week. Next, on page number 8, we have an article referring to two important schemes recently launched by the Modi government. One is Drone Didi scheme and the related Lakhpati Didi scheme. The article is talking about the challenges faced by women, self-help groups and entrepreneurs with regard to taking the advantage of these government programs that have been launched to promote women empowerment. If you look at the Drone Didi initiative, it has been personally championed by the Prime Minister, right? So under this initiative, the Ministry of Agriculture, which is leading this program, it has been trying to provide training to women in rural areas so that they can operate these drones which are commercially available, which can be used for agricultural activities like spraying of pesticides, monitoring the crop condition and the water levels. So drones can play a big role in agriculture, and India is trying out a very innovative solution where rural employment can be created for women, women entrepreneurs can be created, and modern technology can be used to aid modern farming and modern agriculture. So the government provides loans as well to these women-led self-help groups. And the government is trying to equip these women with the required equipment, that is the drones, and the required technical skills as well to operate a drone so that they can provide their services for a cost in rural areas, thus generating income for the women members of the family in rural areas. So that is the Drone Didi scheme launched by the Modi government. Recently, the Lakhpati Didi initiative was also announced by the Prime Minister. Just last year, the announcement was made. And during this year's interim budget, the Lakhpati Didi scheme has been launched. So under this initiative as well, the government is looking to provide easy loans and credit to women's self-help groups. This is being implemented through the Ministry of Rural Development. The idea is to provide easier loans as part of the National Rural Livelihood Mission so that these women-led self-help groups can start out their own small enterprises. They can start out their own businesses with technical support from the government, and this could make women independent. It could generate at least an annual income of 1 lakh rupees for women entrepreneurs, which will make them financially independent, right? So this will help in women empowerment as well. So that is the vision of Lakhpati Didi scheme. And according to this article, both the schemes are facing problems in implementation. Women are finding it difficult to access the credit and the technical support that they need to start out their enterprises. So that's what the article is talking about. But for prelims, both the schemes, their objectives can be important. Next, on page 12, there's an article referring to an ongoing crisis in an African country called the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, sometimes just referred to as Congo. So for many years in the DRC, there is a civil war which has been raging. So please understand where the country is located and which is the rebel group operating here. We don't have to go into the details. Just these basic facts can help you in a prelims question. Especially from Africa, UPSC does focus on these topics where civil wars are going on, or where a disaster has happened, or where military coups have taken place. So those African countries become a focus for UPSC prelims. So map-based questions or straightforward basic questions can be asked. So DRC is located here in Central Africa. It's a very large country blessed with great resources, and it's bound by South Sudan, Central African Republic, Congo, Angola, Zambia, Tanzania, Burundi, and Rwanda, and Uganda. So in Eastern Congo here, there is a major conflict which has been raging from many years. So there's a rebel group that operates here called the M23 Rebels. It is believed that Rwanda is sponsoring them. It's believed that the neighboring country of Rwanda is sponsoring this rebel group. And recently they have engaged in large-scale violence in Eastern DRC. So this has attracted global attention, and many global powers are concerned about the increasing violence in this part of Eastern Congo. Next, we have an article related to India-Sri Lanka relations. According to the article, Sri Lanka has procured some military equipment from China Is that clear? China-Sri Lanka military relations have been improving over the years, and Sri Lanka has procured few explosive and bomb detection equipment from China. So that is the development being reported here. It highlights the growing Chinese influence all across India's neighborhood and how China has been countering India's strategic and military influence in the neighboring countries. But apart from this, there is something else mentioned in the article which is actually important for our exam. The article is mentioning the Indian Ocean Information Fusion Center, also called IFC-IOR, Information Fusion Center for Indian Ocean Region, or the Indian Ocean Information Fusion Center. So what is this facility which is located in India? The article is saying that Sri Lankan Navy has deployed its liaison officers at this facility of India, which promotes military cooperation between India and Sri Lanka. So let's understand what IFC-IOR is all about. See, when the 26/11 attacks happened, when the Mumbai attacks, the Pakistani terrorists from Lashkar-e-Toiba, they came through the sea route to attack the city of Mumbai. So this terror attack exposed the weakness in our coastal and maritime security, right? The terrorists had breached the defenses of the Navy, Coast Guard, and the coastal police. And it was very embarrassing for India to witness such a large terror strike, as it completely exposed the gaps in our coastal and maritime security. So following this incident, the then Manmohan Singh government launched a coastal surveillance radar project. Coastal surveillance radar project was launched. So under this initiative, Bharat Electronics Limited, which specializes in radar technology, it worked closely with Indian Navy to build a chain of radars all along the coastline of India, covering even the island territories of Lakshadweep and Andaman Nicobar. So along the entire coastline of India, almost 7,500 kilometers plus, right? Along the entire coastline, a chain of radars were installed to track the movement of ships and any other vessel all across the Indian Ocean region, from Arabian Sea to Bay of Bengal. So this was phase 1 of the project. Based on the success of the project, we launched phase 2 of this project, and we started extending these radar networks to friendly foreign countries as well. For example, Mauritius, then Seychelles, located over here. So on these island countries as well, India built its radar network. The coastal surveillance radars were installed in Mauritius and Seychelles, and they were connected with the Indian network. In fact, in 2015, Prime Minister Modi visited these two countries and launched the Sagar Doctrine while inaugurating these coastal radars that India had constructed in Mauritius and Seychelles. So now we are having plans to extend these radar networks to Maldives, to Sri Lanka. Even Bangladesh has shown a lot of interest. So we want to expand this network all across the Indian Ocean. So all the radar data which is collected, right, it is collated into the command centers of Indian Navy that's located across the coastline, right? You have the major command centers of the Navy at Karwar, Visakhapatnam, Chennai, Mumbai, Kochi, right? So all the radar data is collated here, and it's finally integrated into a national headquarters. On the outskirts of Delhi, in Gurugram, there is a major command facility which has been set up, which is called IFC-IOR, Information Fusion Center for Indian Ocean Region. It is operated by the Indian Navy. It is like the headquarters of this project. It's like the command center of this intelligence gathering network, right? So this project has a lot of strategic and military significance. It can track all the ships and other moving vessels across the Indian Ocean. And this information, this maritime information, is of great strategic value. So this command center in Gurugram, which is called IFC-IOR, is operated by Indian Navy, and it has generated global interest. So many global powers, which are good friends with India, they've all stationed their liaison officers from their navies to coordinate with Indian Navy. For example, the US, France, Japan, Australia, then even UK, Russia, and many other friendly countries, including Sri Lanka, they've all stationed their naval officers at IFC-IOR as liaison officers who can coordinate with the Indian Navy and collect valuable maritime intelligence and pass it on to their respective navies. So this is a key project which allows India to keep an eye all across the Indian Ocean region. So that is why IFC-IOR becomes important for the exam. Now coming to the last article for today. On page number 16, there's an article that mentions the Eurasian Economic Union, which is abbreviated as EAEU. This is a regional trade grouping and a customs union which is present in Eurasia. All right. So India has been negotiating a free trade agreement with this particular group. And according to media reports, a free trade agreement might be finalized very soon. As we discussed the other day, India has been fast-tracking free trade agreements. Hopefully, before the elections are announced, the government is very quickly trying to finalize few FTAs. We recently signed an FTA with the European Free Trade Association. Plus, India is accelerating the talks with United Kingdom as well. Recently, PM Modi has spoken to UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to accelerate the talks and hopefully seal the deal before the elections are announced in India. And on similar lines, India is very eagerly pursuing an FTA with this trade bloc as well, called EAEU, Eurasian Economic Union. So you should know the basic facts about this organization. It's very important for your prelims. The Eurasian Economic Union is led by Russia. It's a trade bloc, it's a customs union that is led by Russia. And Russia's vision is to recreate the Soviet era economy that existed in this region. As Soviet Union collapsed, all the Soviet republics, they disintegrated, leaving behind Russia as the successor state. So Russia's vision has been to rebuild the Soviet glory, and it has been trying to bring some of the former Soviet republics into a common trading bloc and a customs union. So in 2014, this trade bloc and customs union was established with Russia, Belarus and Kazakhstan. Belarus is a very close ally of Russia in Eastern Europe. Kazakhstan, the largest Central Asian country, is also very close to Russia. So these Russian allies together established the Eurasian Economic Union, and later other countries have also joined the trade association. Armenia and Kyrgyzstan have joined this economic union subsequently, and now India is very eager to finalize a free trade agreement with this group, because we have very good ties with all the countries mentioned over here. India is very close to Russia, very close to Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, because these Central Asian countries are a priority for us, because they have plenty of resources and we have historical cultural links with them. India is very close to Belarus, very close to Armenia. Recently, India has increased its arms and weapons exports to Armenia as part of its conflict with Azerbaijan, right? So as Azerbaijan has gotten closer to Turkey and Pakistan, which have been quite hostile to India, India has gotten closer to Armenia, and we have been exporting advanced weapons to Armenia. So India is trying to get closer to this trade bloc as well, and maybe an FTA might be worked out between India and this economic union. So please know the basics about Eurasian Economic Union. You can expect a prelims question here. So this completes my discussion for today. Please look at the mains practice questions. You can take down the questions and try and write an answer which will help you in your answer writing practice. It's all based on India-Bhutan relations that we discussed in detail. So I expect you to write the answers and post them in the comment section below. So this completes my discussion for today. I hope you guys have liked it. If you did, please let me know in the comments. Don't forget to press the like button and do subscribe to our channel. That is it for today. I'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.